Hey everyone, welcome to the investor.bet NRL Preliminary Finals betting preview. The two games coming up. Friday night we have the Melbourne Storm against the Cronulla Sharks, and then Sunday afternoon the Brisbane Broncos against the Penrith Panthers. The winner of these games will go through to meet in the grand final the following week, and in this video I'm going to preview both games. We're going to break down the stats, the betting history, everything you need to know to successfully bet on these matches, just like we've done every week all season long. Really excited to go through both these games. I think they both set up to be really good games in their own way. We've got 4 of the top 5 teams on the ladder still contesting. Out of those top 5, the Bulldogs are the only team to be eliminated. They were eliminated last week at the hands of Penrith. Of the 4 teams that we have left, we have 2 from the top 4 and then 2 from the teams who've gone through the elimination finals, being the Sharks and Panthers. Last week we had 2 of the top 4 finishing teams eliminated. The Sharks eliminated the Raiders 32-12 as kind of expected, and then Panthers 20-point winners over the Bulldogs in the game that was probably the more predictable one of the round as well. Sharks winning as outsiders. They were sitting for most of the week around a 4 to at best a 6-point underdog. Then with the news Ethan Strange ruled out, they came into about a 1-point underdog. Penrith sitting just under the double-digit favourites most of the week, ended up winning by 20 points, with largely doing most of their work in the first half. That first half by the Panthers looked a bit like a video game where on easy mode and super easy to score. They're just running in tries every opportunity that they got in that first half. Bulldogs scored a few late tries to make the scoreline a bit more respectable, but obviously dominant wins by both of these sides. It'll give them both confidence going into their matchups against the teams that are coming off their weeks off. So first game we'll look at is the Storm against the Sharks. This is down in Melbourne. The Storm opened $1.44 favourites, -7.5. Since then, over the past 24 hours or so, they've shortened into $1.38 to $1.40, depending where you look, and that handicaps out to 8.5. Now, interestingly, like normally when these sides face off and it's in Melbourne, the Storm are around $1.30 to $1.40 at absolute most favourites for these games. So I am surprised a little bit that they put them up in the $1.45 range. I think the bookmakers are giving plenty of credit to the Sharks. There is that controversy in the media that do the Sharks get given credit, do they not, kind of thing going back and forth. Obviously, like watching their games against the Roosters, straight away after the Sharks beat the Roosters, Fox, all they could talk about is how good the Roosters have been all season. Then obviously when they beat the Raiders, they did talk up the Raiders' performance, but without Ethan Strange, it wasn't a full Raiders team. But Sharks are also without Cam McInnes in terms of like Sharks are without their captain, but different position. But I do think it is interesting that the Sharks did go up $2.80 for this game. Now, I do like to see the way the market is moving because I do give the Sharks a strong hope in this game. The Storm have been a touch shaky at home this season. Now, we go back like the past few years, like Storm don't lose much at Amy Park. When you look through, they've only lost a total of 4 games since 2020, the beginning of 2023. Those losses, one was against the Sharks, one against the Dragons, one against Manly, and then a couple of weeks ago against the Roosters. Now, when I look through at that overall record, the last 5 games, they only have a 3-2 record. 2 of those wins being against the Bulldogs, who the Storm only won those games by 8 points and 6 points, and there is the Bulldogs form line through the Sharks, as the Sharks played them in round 27 and won the game very easily, and the Storm haven't been convincing against the Bulldogs either. So that's a little bit concerning. You have the losses in there against Manly and the 30-point loss against the Roosters, and that other win, a part of this last 5 games at Amy Park, was against the Broncos 22-2 in the game where Reynolds and Mann both got injured. And when you lose like your halfback and 5'8" in the same game, then you're not going to really beat anybody unless you've already got a big lead on the scoreboard and it's a low-rank opposition. So obviously Storm are going to win that one. So I do have slight concerns of that. Their other performances at home this year, they've had some good wins against the Warriors and Roosters in there as well. But there have been a lot of games where they've just beaten up on low-ranked sides. So just overall, I don't think the Storm are as dominant home side as we saw last year and in 2023. So just be a little bit cautious of that. And the Storm, they are heavily reliant on their first halves in home games. So if we bring up the home game statistics for these teams, so looking at home games, Storm have the best margin and by far the best first half margin, averaging a 13 margin. Their first half points for is 18.5 on average, and they're also the best first half defense at 5.5 points conceded on average. And overall, they're the best home defense and the 4th ranked home attack this season. But a lot of that damage is being done in the first half. And when you compare that to where they rank in away games, their overall points for is 3rd. First half drops down to 11, and first half defense drops down to a 7th ranking at 10.8. So you can see the differential there. This is where the pivotal part of this game is going to be, is this first half. Cronulla need to be in there in the game early. They can't afford the Storm to get the jump on them, and they may be able to capitalize on the Storm with that week off. The Sharks have the very best first half margin of all teams in away games this season. They are also very good off a win as well. If we bring up those stats there, they have the best first half margin off a win this season at 7.4. So this is going to be crucial here for Cronulla to hang in this game early. We'll come back to some more of these stats in a second. Just want to share with you the overall betting trends, and then I just want to review the 2 meetings these sides have had so far this season. Teams have split the past 6 meetings, so it's been 3 wins each. They're basically going win-loss against each other. Storm won the most recent encounter in round 17 at home, and the Sharks won the round 11 encounter 31-26 in their home game. The home team has won 10 of the past 13, so that bodes well for the Storm, and their home side has covered 11 of the past 13. Storm are 10-2 at Amy Park this season. Sharks have lost 7 of their last 8 at Amy Park. They did win there in round 10 last year. That's this game right here. As $2.95 outsiders, which is very similar to what they are for this game. Now, the lineups have just come out. At the moment I got up the tabs to record this, I saw the lineups had come out. And so Sharks are without Tom Hazelton with the concussion from last week. No other major ins. Kafusi is going to be the player that comes in to replace Hazelton. And then for the Storm, 2 big ins in Jerome Hughes and Ryan Pappenhausen. Pappenhausen returns from the concussion. Jerome Hughes back in the side after a broken wrist. That's obviously a significant injury to try and come back from, as it only happened in the game against the Broncos in the final round. So it's a very short turnaround for him. But he is named in the halfback position in the starting side. It looks like he will be playing here. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see how he goes, particularly in defense. And I think the Sharks will obviously look to target him as much as they can. The sides' first 2 meetings this season, round 11, the Sharks won 31-26 at home. They got the jump a little bit here on the Melbourne Storm. They led this matchup 25-12 at halftime, scoring 4 tries to 2 in the first half. The Storm got the first try after halftime. The Sharks responded through Atkinson, and then Coates got a late try to see if the Storm could try and steal it. They got it back under a converted try, but were unable to score the winner in the end. In that game for the Sharks, they did lose Sam Stonestreet and Jesse Ramian both early in the game, which is obviously why Coates was able to capitalize with 3 tries. Interested into how that actually happened with him matching up on Sione Katoa this week. It's definitely a much tougher matchup than Sharks were playing Dan Atkinson on the wing at one point and trying to overcome the issue, like the injuries that they picked up in that game. Stats wise, possession was fairly even, completion rates were both even. Sharks +1 line breaks. Neither side really missed many tackles either, and what was a 57 points total scored. Errors were even. Storm won the penalty count 7-5. Sharks won the set restarts 5-2 overall. So a game that was very little between them. Basically very similar lineups that'll be taking the field for this game. As you can see, Pappenhausen, Hughes, Munster, and Harry Grant all in the team for this game there for the Melbourne Storm, but it was at the Sharks Stadium, which is a big advantage for them. Then the later meeting in round 17, the Storm won 30-6. Now, they scored 5 tries to 1. This game was 10-6 at halftime. The Storm got an early penalty goal after the break, put them out to 12-6, but with about 15-16 minutes to go, it was still 12-6, and then the Storm ran in 3 late tries, which pushed the margin right out to 24 points. They also did have a disallowed try during this final 15 minutes, I think with about 8 minutes or so to go. So potentially could have scored 4 tries, but this game was a one-score game until the final 15 minutes when the Storm got away with it, and this is key here for the Sharks. They were able to hang in there in the first half, had it within a 1 score. They're going to need to be able to do the same thing again on Friday night. Stats for this game, Storm had all the ball, 55%, and completed at 89%. Line breaks only 2-1, and significantly more meters for the Storm off the back of their advantage in all the possession. Tackles, and very few missed tackles, so both meetings we've seen this season have had low missed tackle counts. Sharks made 3 more errors, and they won the penalty count 5-4, but the Storm won the set restarts 5-2 over. The only main change from the starting side is Logo, and Warbrick is now in the side. Then for the Sharks for this game, they will be a very similar side, but without Cam McInnes this time around. Now, this matchup is very interesting. I think it being played on Friday night is a huge advantage for the Sharks. When we look at these sides' performances in day to night games, you see the Storm, their average margin this season in day matches 25.3. So a huge edge, plus 16.5 in the first half and plus 8.8 in the second half. Now, when you compare that to night game rankings, the Storm drop all the way down to a 0.6 average margin, and when the Sharks are up here in a plus 1.8, and the Sharks also have the edge in first half margins, and they're very similar in the second half margins as well. Points for the Storm are only averaging 11.4 in the first half and 11.3 in the second. That puts them 7th overall, just behind the Sharks. And when you match up these two sides defensively, they're very even overall in the season, but Storm are the better attacking side. And I think the night football just brings them together, because when you look through, there's a big difference between averaging 22 points a game compared to averaging 38.5. And the Sharks average just drops from the 27 down to 22.5. Defensively in night games, the Storm are conceding 22 points and the Sharks are just 20.7. Compared to day matches, the Storm are the number 1 defensive side. So the matchup in round 17, when they played on the Sunday afternoon and the Storm won by 24 points, we're going to see a very different type of game here. And the Sharks, as I mentioned, were right in the contest in that game for the most part of it. Both teams come into this. The other thing to look at here, and I'll bring up the rankings for that as well, is the day's rest. Coming into this, the Storm will have the 7 days rest. So this season on 7 days rest, once again, their first half margin is really good, and they're putting up good numbers from that perspective. Their attack and defense both ranking in the top 2. But I really like the Sharks off a short turnaround there on the 6 days rest, having played the Saturday night last week. Now backing up on the Friday night. They ranked 3rd in the full-time margin in the first half and 7th in the second half. But they also are 1st in first half points for. Just need to make sure they clean up their defense on the back of that, but for the most part their defense has been good in recent weeks, and they've been playing some good attacking sides like Canberra, Roosters the past 2 weeks in finals. They've been able to really limit both of those sides and keep them to 12 points or less. And basically, to overall summarize this game, I'm just at this stage watching the market. The line's already gone out to an 8.5. Hoping it just keeps on moving a little bit more, or we get to double digits. So I'm really looking for the Sharks at the plus 10.5. And could look at an alternate line here at the Sharks plus 12.5. I do think like the Storm are the most likely winner of this game. If you had to tip who's going to win prelim final, Storm Sharks in Melbourne, Storm's like the obvious one. But if the Sharks can play 80 minutes like they did against Canberra, like they did against the Roosters, like they did against the Bulldogs the week prior, and because they've been playing 3 like top teams over their past 3 games, then they're definitely in a shot at keeping this game close, and particularly with it being played at night, definitely brings Storm back to the pack. Storm are advantaged with Hughes and Pappenhausen coming back into the side. That gives them a massive boost. But I think the Sharks can hang in there if they keep playing with confidence. And I do think if the Storm were to win this game, it's going to be a 1-12 margin. I don't think we're going to see a blowout, 20, 24-point win by Melbourne in this game. It hasn't really been their style this season, particularly against better opponents. A lot of their games against the top sides have been close and small margin games, and I think that's what we're going to see here. I think it's going to be a one-score game. So like the Sharks with the plus, compared to the past 2 weeks against the Raiders and Roosters, where I've liked them on the money line as well to win the game outright, don't like that as much this week. This is definitely the toughest test, that's for sure, but I do like them. If we can really get this out to the plus 10.5, that would be ideal. I think the Sharks can keep it within that range for sure. The total is 40.5. 4 of the past 5 head-to-head have gone over the total. Last week we saw both matches go over the total in the NRL. Bookmakers have adjusted a little bit with the numbers up for both of these games, I think. This is a game where you've got two good attacking sides and also two good defensive sides. So it's one that could really go either way. At 40.5, I'd have a slight lean towards the unders. As just with both sides being strong defensively, I think they'll be slightly refraining from making too many mistakes. I also think the Sharks will want to avoid getting into a shootout with the Melbourne Storm. And I also do have some slight reservations on the Storm attack. They haven't scored over 24 points in any of their last 7 games. And you can go back a little bit further to the game against Manly as well. That would make it 8 of their past 9 games where they failed to score over 24 points. The only exception was up in Sydney against the Roosters in that 34-30 game, which was a bit of a shootout. But most of these teams have been able to limit the Storm scoring to around that 20-point mark, somewhere between the 16 and 22 range. And the Sharks being a really good defensive side, their numbers stack up well away games. So I think they can keep the Storm somewhat in check. And that's why I also like them to be able to keep this close with the plus handicap. So lean towards the unders as the total for this game. The following game, which isn't until the Sunday afternoon, so that means that the winner of the Broncos Panthers is going to have a 2-day rest disadvantage going into the grand final against the winner of the Storm Sharks. But anyway, looking at this game, Panthers are favourites. They opened $1.68. They're out to $1.74, $1.75, and that can just keep moving as far as I'm concerned. The line minus 2.5 is kind of into 1.5 now, and the total is 45.5. Penrith, they've won 9 of the past 10 against the Broncos and covered the past 3 in a row. Penrith have also won the past 4 against the Broncos at Suncorp Stadium. And those last 4 wins that they've had over the Broncos have all been by between 8 and 13 points. The matchup early this season, so they've only met once this year, was round 9. Penrith won that game 32-8. They were the home team in that game as $2.68 outsiders, but it was Magic Round at Suncorp Stadium, so it was actually a Broncos home game technically. Brisbane, they've won 6 of their past 7 at Suncorp. Penrith have won 15 of their past 18 at Suncorp Stadium. And I really doubt the stadium's going to hold much fears technically for the Panthers, but for either side. One concerning thing, the last 3 times these sides have met since the 2023 grand final where the Panthers came back to beat the Broncos, Brisbane have only scored 12, 6, and 8 points in those last 3 games against Penrith. And whilst Penrith were one of the worst defensive sides early in the season, they have shot their way all the way up to the 3rd best season defensive ranking position. The lineup's out for this side. No changes for the Panther side who beat the Bulldogs last week. But the Broncos bring in Adam Reynolds and Ezra Mann, which was expected for this game. Billy Walters out injured and Patrick Carrigan out suspended for the high shot against Canberra a couple of weeks ago. Now, looking at the meeting earlier season, it was Sunday afternoon, exact same setup that we have going into this game this weekend, and Penrith 32-8 winners over the Broncos. Brisbane scored the first try through Ben Hunt in the 8th minute, and then the final 5 tries of the game all coming through the Panthers. Coming into this game, Penrith had only won 2 of their first 8 games compared to the Broncos. They were coming into this game with a 5-3 record, and obviously as home favourites to win. Panthers led 20-8 at halftime and then went on with it with both tries in the second half. The stats for this game, Penrith 53% possession, completion rates were even, Penrith slightly better. They had 7-4 line breaks. 30 more runs and about 200 extra meters gained, but Broncos did win the post-contact meters. Quite a lot of missed tackles, both 35 plus. Offloads, both around the 10 mark. Errors, both around the 10 mark, 10 to the Panthers, 11 to the Broncos. Panthers won the penalty count 4-3, but Broncos won the set restarts 5-1 overall. But it was a game that was a bit of a blowout overall. Panthers were without Mitch Kenny in this game. Casey McLean was also the replacement, wasn't in the side for this matchup. No Brian Toho either. So this is definitely a different Panther that beat up on the Broncos earlier in the year. Broncos in this game, no Reece Walsh, so Selwyn Cobble was at fullback. Ben Hunt was in the halves with Reynolds. So Ezra Mam comes back in. Ben Hunt goes to hooker. Billy Walters is out of the side. And then Patrick Carrigan out as well from this matchup. So both teams, it's a different look compared to this game. Obviously, with Reece Walsh coming into the side, not getting the suspension, definitely helps the Broncos and gives them some sort of a chance in this matchup, but it's definitely going to be tough. Now, looking at these teams and how they match up against each other, Broncos, they're coming in off the win over the Raiders in a game where they definitely weren't in the contest with 15 minutes to go, and then there's that late closing burst got them over the line. They've now won 5 in a row, wins over the Raiders, Storm, Cowboys, Knights, and Dolphins during that period. And then for the Penrith Panthers, they've been very good since basically round 13. They've now only lost 3 games. The one against the Bulldogs where they rested everyone, and then golden point losses against the Raiders and Storm. Outside of that, they've won 12 of their past 15 games going back to that round 13 game. Hence why and I think like the Panthers, they're just really peaking at the right time. So with Penrith, around $1.75, they're creeping to $1.80. They're definitely the way I'm looking at going in this game. I just think they're the side that's just more capable of playing a full 80-minute performance. I think Broncos just really rely on these bursts where they score 3-4 tries in a 15-20 minute period, and that's what wins them the games. They may get 2 quick tries against the Panthers, but I really can't see Penrith giving up 3-4 tries. What the Raiders did a couple of weeks ago against the Broncos, what the Sharks did earlier in the season, and it's like the Broncos have been able to do it a few times against different opponents. Like, you can do that against sides that are like your less experienced sides, or who don't have as many big name players in their team as other teams. But I just can't see the Broncos being able to do that and get away with it against Penrith. Broncos are going to have to play like they did in the final 15 minutes of the game against Canberra for at least 3/4 of this game in order to win. So I think it's a bit of a risk taking the Broncos here. Penrith, even though it's classed as a away game, I don't think that Suncorp Stadium is going to be an issue for them. They also have a really good away stats so far this season. If we look at their away rankings, they're the number 2 in margin, first half margin and second half margin, both ranked 3rd overall. So really good numbers. Their first half points and second half points both in the top 3, averaging 27 points compared to their home games only averaging 21. So their attack's actually better in away games, and this also isn't counting the game last week against the Bulldogs as an away game. So, these numbers definitely stack up really well. And just for reference, like when you compare that to the Broncos, their home numbers, if we come through and look, number 3 in attack and number 9 in defense. When you compare that to away rankings, they drop down to 5th in attack and come up slightly to 5th in defense. But that's generally what you'd expect to see, whereas Panthers are the other way around. Day games as well, Panthers ranked 3rd, Broncos ranked 7th in margin. And their attacking numbers, Panthers ranked 5th, Broncos ranked 6th, so they're fairly even from that perspective. But defensively, the Panthers in 3rd and the Broncos down in 6th. And Panthers defense in day games comes all the way down to 15.1 compared to sitting at 21.4 in night games. So like with these matches, when you really dive into the stats and the splits and different situations for these teams, like the Sharks and Panthers have both been able to pick up game times that have given them strong chances to come out and beat the teams that won and got the week off last time. So I think both these matches are going to give us a really good indication on how much not having to play last weekend counts going into a prelim final. We obviously know it does matter a lot. You basically have to finish top 4 to win the premiership. So off that, Storm and Broncos are significantly advantaged, but we've got teams that get the right setup to definitely give these games a challenge. So I think it sets up to be 2 really good games. For the Broncos Panthers, I'm definitely thinking Penrith to win this game. The total is very high at 45.5. 8 of the past 11 head-to-head have gone under the total. And the fair total I had for this game was 47.5, but it is a prelim final. And this is a game where I probably refrain from backing the total. I'd lean towards it being a higher scoring game than it would be a lower scoring game. Just the way Penrith were able to score last week against the Bulldogs. And this year, the Bulldogs, yes, they've slipped away a bit late in the season, hence why I'm a bit concerned about the Storm's form in those 2 games against Canterbury. But Penrith ran in 46 points last week against the number 1 defensive side. Now they play the 7th ranked defensive side in the Broncos. That's significantly worse than the Bulldogs when you look at the overall numbers. So that's definitely concerning. If the Panthers bring the same level of attack that they had last week, and I feel like last week's performance is only going to give them more confidence going into this game, then they're going to be very hard to beat, and it'll probably lead towards a very high scoring game, as Penrith gave up a few soft tries to the Bulldogs when they had the game won last week, and the similar thing could happen, and we know the Broncos can score quickly. So I think having this game at a high total definitely gives you the indication that they're expecting points and these teams can score them quickly. As I mentioned, like Panthers were scoring almost every set in that first half against the Bulldogs, and they'll probably be looking to do something similar again here against the Broncos and establish a lead early at some stadium. So that's how I'm looking at betting the games this weekend. I'm really looking forward to them. Should be good games Friday night and Sunday afternoon. You also have the AFL Grand Final on Saturday. I know there's people out there who you're either NRL or AFL, you're one or the other, but for me personally, I like pretty much every sport, and especially betting on and using every sport to make money. But yeah, AFL Grand Final, Brisbane Lions against Geelong Cats is on Saturday afternoon, so that splits these 2 games. There is a preview out on the channel for that, so definitely check that out if you're interested in betting on the AFL Grand Final. Then also, we've got week 4 of the NFL coming up, plus horse racing, and we're really getting into the Group 1 period of the Spring Carnival. The next month and a half is going to be massive. So if you're interested in horse racing and betting on horse racing to make money, definitely check out the racing show. I'll put the link to that in the description. That's where I post everything I bet on racing. And for me personally, horse racing contributes about 60 to 70% of my yearly profit from betting overall, like across all the sports and racing. Racing contributes more than all the sports combined because it's the easiest thing to profit on. So I post everything I'm betting, how much to stake, and the reasons why I'm backing each horse in there. So you're not only knowing what bets to put on that'll make you money, you're also learning how I chose those bets and why they're bets. So you're picking up skills and learning at the same time. And right now, if you join and we don't make 50 units profit during the Spring Carnival, then you get your membership extended for 3 months completely free. So with all the really good racing coming up, we've got 3 meetings. We've got Wednesday, Friday night, and Saturday coming up this week. Plus, obviously, the next 6-7 weeks, there's really good meetings and high quality races every Saturday. So it's a really great time to get into it. So definitely check that out. We'll be back to preview the grand final, obviously, once we get the winners of these 2 games. And the try scorer video last week, we hit both try scorers in the Sharks game. Ronaldo Militao got a double. Kale Iro got a bit of a right place, right time try from that kick, knocked back. The ball bounced to him. He was able to run over under the post. And then in the Panthers Bulldogs game, we just took Brian Toho on that left wing. He got a double. Alamotti got a hat-trick over the other side of the field, but we just went with Toho in that game. There were probably a couple of other ones. I tried to keep the selections to a minimum just with the 2 games, but probably could have hit Preston, as he was the only player I liked in the Bulldogs. Had him underlined, but didn't make him a bet. He's paying over $4. And last week, we backed Nico Hines to score against the Roosters. He didn't score in that game, but then got a try in the game against the Raiders on the weekend. So Nico Hines has been one that missed him all throughout the season. We backed him a few games and he tends to score on the weeks where we don't take him. So that's been a bit of an anomaly, but that's sometimes the way it goes. But if you follow the processes of how you choose the bets, then that's how you profit overall in the long term. It's not about winning every bet. It's not about a perfect record. It's not about a best bet and putting a huge amount of money on one single play because that's the play that's going to win. It's about finding bets with edges, doing it consistently, and just repeating that process day in, day out. That's what amounts to overall profits in the long term and not betting emotionally. That all being said, those are my thoughts for the games this weekend. Good luck. See you guys in the Try Scorer preview.